What's up, nerds? Welcome back to the Raging Rainbow. My name is Dylan, doing a comic book review today for Teen Titans Academy Yearbook 2021, a book that tells us more about the identity of Red X than the actual ongoing series. Alright guys, so first things first, if you will notice, I'm obviously still in this new setup that I've been using for streaming. That's mostly because I didn't feel like, again, standing for the review, and I just didn't feel like moving my laptop and everything over there to go do that. So here I am doing the review here. So if that bothers you, so let's kind of get into what's going on with this book itself, because when I saw that this was coming out, and especially specifically that it's called like Yearbook or whatever, I was like, okay, what is this? Is this just going to be a thing where they kind of go through like, oh, who are all of the students at the school and everything? No, it very much is not that. But not only is it not that, it's actually a little bit more helpful than the actual ongoing series has been, particularly in regard to like who this person who is parading around as Red X is now. So let's just kind of talk about what's going on, because the first thing that we see here is that the first story specifically is kind of told to give us a little bit more backstory on Stitch, who, as you will see, is apparently the class president, and we're going to see how exactly that ends up happening. But so anyway, Stitch gives this little speech, or this little, like, I don't even know what you would call it, this beginning. It just says a letter from the class president. And it's talking about, the journey about growth and change, and not about, the things that they learn in health class. Stitch is talking about the much bigger journey, the kind our faithful teachers, the classic Titans, undertook. Theirs is the story of humble sidekicks who carved a path to their own identities, independent of the heroes they served. A path that started in a big T shaped building in San Francisco and led all the way to another big T shaped building in New York City. And so, as you leaf through this book, turning the page from memory to memory, call to mind the incredible journeys of those that came before us to open the doors of this school so that one day we could walk through them as we begin journeys of our own. So then we actually get into this whole little setup, which is basically Stitch describing this whole scenario of fighting against Felix Faust while wielding like these immense magical powers. And Stitch is saying, like, this is what I dream about, wielder of ancient powerful magic, leaping between all the knowable planes of existence, meting out cold, hard justice. This is absolutely something I would dream about if I could, because if you'll remember, Stitch is not actually a, well, as Stitch is going to go on to assert, they keep referring to themselves as they, but they wear a skirt. And I realize there are some guys who would wear skirts, but the overwhelming majority of people who would wear a skirt are what? Girls. So Stitch is saying that apparently she can't sleep or whatever because even though she's not a human, she's still a person. So I don't know how we're whatever. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, they are roommates with Matt Price, the one who's like a mystery, and that's not even his real name. He said he was just found by like sailors, and that was like the name of a poem or whatever, and that he ended up taking on or written by someone named Matt. Whatever. That's how he got the name, from the poem. So she's over here saying, like, I mostly go unnoticed around here. Teenagers want to be seen as adults, so they tend to ignore the childish things they once loved that, let's face it, I highly resemble. And that's one thing that kind of bothers me about Stitch, because if you'll notice from her appearance, or their appearance, like, it's very close to what Ragman is. The first time I saw Stitch, I thought they were an extension of like Ragman, like a sidekick, or like maybe some part of the like quilt that took on sentience or something. Like, I thought it was gonna be something interesting like that, and that's not what we've gotten so far. Although I was right in my assessment, and if you haven't seen my very first video of this particular series, go back and watch it, because I called it 100% on what type of character Stitch was going to be. Stitch is absolutely that character they throw in at the most random moments to just introduce a bit of levity and just be weird. So we kind of get some of that in this story, but we also get, just some actual, I guess, pathos from the actual character, I guess. So she's kind of talking here They are talking here about when sleep time's over, breakfast time begins. And I love breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day, according to Coach Cyborg. He's mostly talking about the nutritional benefits, but other kids really enjoy eating food as a group social activity. Me, I don't have any friends to eat with. Also, I don't have a digestive system. But I love the way eggs look like googly eyes staring back at me. And it is nice having someone notice you, even if they're not real. After breakfast, it seems like the most exciting stuff happens in the halls. The corridor between classes might just be the perfect distillation of the high school experience, a wild mix of social, professional, dramatic, and mundane. It's all hustle and bustle, hanging with friends, avoiding enemies. If only I could figure out how to make either one of those. So they come up and see that apparently everybody is crowded around signing up to be class president, and this is how you know that apparently this whole school is just full of nerds, I guess. Because I remember being in school and I was actually the class president of my like sophomore year, and I went to one meeting and then they had to find another class president because I was so bored by the shit they were talking about. It was literally just about, oh, well, we have to try and raise more money for the school, well, specifically for the athletics, so that way, because we were going to go and like work the concession stand and sell stuff at the games. That was literally all they talked about. There was nothing else going on. I was like, this is what I'm president of? To hell with this. So that's why I'm saying, like, if they're all this concerned with being class president, like, what are y'all really worried about? Anyway, Stitch comes up and assumes like, oh, this will be a good way to make friends or whatever. And so we see some of the other people that signed up. We have who? Maggie Whitaker, Tubi, of course, Kevin Williams. I can't see what the hell that name is. The Bat Pack, who will rule as a what? Democratic anarchist triumvirate? No, geniocratic. Geniocratic. I'm actually gonna. I don't even what. Oh my! Why am I bothering to look at this anyway? So anyway, Stitch is saying like, poor sweet innocent Dane. And y'all remember how I've been saying that Dane was going to end up being Red X? Well, we finally actually not only get direct reference to Dane, but we also get to see Dane using his powers and interacting with someone else. So they're here and they're both like back to back, as you can see with them like doing their thing right here. So they're like back to back using their powers. Stitch has the blue powers here, and then Dane has the green powers. So he's saying, wait, so you didn't sign up? Why? What do you have to lose? And that's when she says, or they say, poor, sweet, innocent Dane. Turns out I've got a lot to teach this kid about magic and life, because apparently Dane does magic. So Stitch says, what do I have to lose? The election, for starters, then my dignity and self respect, not to mention my reputation. So he says, I thought the whole point was that you don't have a reputation, that running for president is a way to get one, to get noticed, so you can make more friends. And Stitch says, honestly, I don't know what gets you noticed around here, and I don't need more friends, Dane. I need any. I have zero friends. To which Dane is giving her, like, or them, this dopey ass look, and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm your friend. And so that's when they, like, drop all the weights, because Stitch is just like, what? So apparently that, I don't know why that took you off guard. But anyway, Dane is saying like, Stitch, you know we're friends, right? And Stitch in the inner monologue is like, friends? Dane's just a fellow student of magic. And again, we haven't been given any indication up until this exact moment to know that he uses magic. Stitch says, the same age as me, whom I enjoy talking to and hanging out with all the time. That can't be all a friend is, can it? Yeah, but pretty much is. And then Stitch is like, I don't really. But then we see this fight between these other two Utes who are in the gym, right? And they start tussling or whatever the hell. And so, for whatever reason, there weren't any, I guess, adults around to stop the kids with superpowers from beating the hell out of each other. So they start actually like destroying the building. And then Stitch notices it and says, and that one doesn't even know that that one kissed that one's girlfriend. And I was like, wait, how are we supposed to know what's actually going on? But then the guy says, what, to the girl. So I was like, oh, okay, so this big butch Les kissed his girlfriend and he's just now finding out, even though Stitch apparently knew. So Anyway, they go on fighting, and then Dane says he's gonna go get help to wait here, and then takes off. And then that's when they notice that like the court or the hoop is like falling down, like I guess about to hit them, and no one apparently was going to do anything about it. So Stitch decides to be the one to do it and says, "Spoiler: in my memoirs, I'll enigmatically title this chapter the Planchement Panic." I don't know what the hell that's supposed to signify, even though I don't speak whatever that is. I'm pretty sure it's French, isn't it? Anyway, so they see the thing falling, and then Stitch uses their magic powers to stop it. So this is what I'm saying. Like, doesn't everybody have powers? Nobody was going to do anything, but okay, cool. Stitch stepped in to do something about it and stopped it. So everybody starts like celebrating and everything, and like lifts Stitch up into the air, and they're all like doing that whole thing like from a movie and shit. And then Stitch is saying, "I'm not totally complaining, but this went on for like 12 whole minutes. Bet you didn't know poly cotton fibers could cramp up, but here we are." So anyway, we see this other speech bubble that says, "It sounds as though the entire ordeal ended in your favor, President Stitch." So we see not only was Stitch made class president, but also her mentor is apparently Dr. Fate. So again, I would have preferred it being Ragman considering Stitch's appearance and the fact that Ragman is also like a magical based hero. But I mean, apparently it's going to be Dr. Fate. So Stitch is saying like, only if I win the election. Okay, so we're still waiting on the results, I guess. And Fate says you will, but then Stitch says, "How do you? Oh, it's like fate, isn't it?" To which Dr. Fate's like, "More like faith." So Stitch is like, "Ah, cute." Anyway, it didn't all play out exactly like that, but close enough. Sort of a day in the life Eleanor Rigby kind of jam. We laughed, we loved, we learned, bada bing. All right. So Fate says, "It sounds to me like you've made great strides, Stitch. Perhaps at last you are beginning to appreciate that coming here was." And then Stitch cuts him off by being like, yeah, just what the doctor ordered. I know you want that to be your new catchphrase, but it's just never going to take off. Now, skedaddle. It's lights out. So Fate's like, "Already? All right, well then. Good night, my young apprentice." And then he leaves. So Stitch does this thing where she's been like constantly interrupting Matt while he's trying to sleep. So she lays down and then like yells out, "Sleep tight, Matt!" And he wakes up, he's like, "Huh?" So whatever. We go from there to where Stitch signs up and then is like putting up signs with I think Dane's help to run for president. And so we see that, and then Stitch is saying, "Tonight, if I could dream, I would dream about them," because Stitch is talking about like all of the people that they're there to represent, whatever. And then that was the end of that story, because then we go into this like in memoriam thing where they're remembering Roy Harper, which I don't really know why. If you know what, if you're reading Infinite Frontier, which I don't blame you if you're not, but if you're reading that right now, I mean, he's back and he has no idea where the hell he is or what's going on, seemingly. So we'll see. And then we get this little breakdown of like the different faculty and everything. And of course, someone drew a heart around Beast Boy and Raven, because they're the next story we're about to get, where again, Raven isn't acting like Raven, and I don't understand why. I don't have a problem with the way that Beast Boy is being portrayed here, because he is being shown as the caring person he kind of always has been. But Raven is being shown as much more depressed, much more sullen, and I don't really understand why. But anyway, we start out with this gigantic explosion of the tower, and then we see where, I mean, they're trying to get away, and it looks like Beast Boy doesn't really make it. So we kind of go from there. And then, as you can see, we see it goes from him being him to him combined with Cyborg. And then we kind of go from there to, I guess, like the setup for this, which is basically like Beast Boy and Raven are having this nice little like dinner or whatever. And she's, like I said, just depressed, like constantly worried. He's just trying to enjoy the meal, enjoy the moment. And then she's just saying like, because he says, "I'm sorry, you wanted to have a nice dinner and I'm over here being an animal." And then he asks, "Was it another premonition?" She says, a vision. They're only premonitions if they come to pass." If you had been a guy, that would have been mansplaining. But anyway, she says, "Can we just forget it? Maybe start over?" And he says, "Of course, we can absolutely start over. But there's something I should tell you first. You'll have to make more appetizers because I ate the leftovers when you went to the bathroom." So Anyway, he tells her, like, he tries to get her to get up and dance. And then she's like, well, we really should be getting back to the rest of the others. And then we could see that what actually happened was she used her powers to freeze everybody else so that they could have, like, a quiet moment, which is exactly what he said. He's like, you're the one who literally stopped time to have a quiet dinner date. And it's Mr. Beast Boy to you, ma'am. And then he asked her, or should I go back to Changeling? Which, if you don't know, that's another name. I think that was the first name he was going by, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken. But that's the other name he was using, Changeling, instead of Beast Boy. So he says, Vic says it's stupid that I still go by Boy. So he's like, hey, it doesn't matter what the future holds or the past. This moment is what matters, okay? And she's like, all right, just 5 more minutes. So they go on dancing. And then we get more, because like I said, this, if you remember, this is supposed to be a yearbook. So they're trying to give that yearbook vibe by showing different, like, pictures and stuff. Most of this is actually, like, I'm pretty sure almost all from the first issue. Like this one of Brick and Diana or Donna, that's from the first issue. That of them having the assembly, that's from the first issue. This of the like other the actual graduate, the upperclassmen they keep calling them, that was also from the first issue. I'm pretty sure all of it was, but we go on from there to this backup story of Matt Price, where they go on to basically like assume very strongly that he's Superboy. And I kind of saw it. I was like, okay, that would kind of make sense since he was found in the water. He doesn't really know who he is or where he comes from, but he seems to have powers. Like we saw in the last issue of this series that he actually was flying when the Bat Pack was looking for him, so apparently he can do that. And then he also says that he could punch. So apparently he has some modicum of like super strength. So we kind of expand on that here, where they who is it? Chupacabra refers to him as Superman Boy, and then who is it? He's asking about Tubi, and Brat Girl says like he's at home this weekend, upstate. So he takes off flying after for some reason Chupacabra asks him, "You okay, Theo?" Why? I don't know why he called him Theo, which is Spanish for uncle. Why do you call him uncle? Like, aren't y'all all basically the same age? But anyway, he goes to where Tubi's at. And we see this like burning barn or whatever. So he shows up and says like, what's going on? And so Tubi's saying like, Mama's trapped inside. And so he's like, all right, well, can you like extend your body long enough, because he sees the water tower over there. So he's telling him like, all right, well, since you can make yourself into tubes, how far can you extend yourself? And he's like, pretty far. And then he's like, he tells him to hold on tight, and then he flies him up to the water tower. And he tells him, all right, get ready. He says, just do your thing. I'll get your mama out. So he takes off back into the building. And so when he comes back in, as you can see, there's a woman like on the outside. So that's obviously not who he's going inside to rescue. No, he's going to rescue the cat named Mama, because she has kittens and everything. So I was like, okay, all right, y'all got me. I'm an animal lover, so every time y'all do this type of thing, when you put animals in the story, I'm invested. So anyway, he goes in and he rescues the cat and the kittens. And then, like, Tubi, I think, is the one who keeps making all these references to him being like Superboy. And then he just keeps telling him, like, I'm not Superboy. Like, I'm telling you, I'm not Superboy. And then, anyway, like, Tubi's parents end up taking him in because they're saying, like, the barn's not going to rebuild itself. We should get started. And then the mom is like, after breakfast, you guys go get washed up. So she's going to make them food and everything. And then we see this magnificent spread that they have, like, prepared. And then I think Matt ends up even asking him, like, it's just, do you always do this? And Tubi's like, do what? He's like, gather around a perfectly appointed sitcom level breakfast table with your mom and dad and eat together. So I know that that's weird. I used to like eat dinner with my families, like at the end when I was in school. Like that was a thing we would do. My mom made sure of it. So I mean, I've heard that apparently it helps families. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but I could see it being a thing. So if it is, try to normalize it, because there's nothing wrong with it. Like there's nothing wrong with talking to your family. You're related to them. So anyway, they're welcoming him into the family and everything, and then they're gonna go upstairs to like make up a room for him so he can stay. But Tubi tries to tell him like, you don't actually have to stay if you don't want to. And then he tells him like, all right, well, welcome to the farm, because he says like, the barn's not gonna rebuild itself, or so I'm told. So he's saying like, yeah, I'll go ahead and stay and help y'all rebuild. So he's like, all right, well, go ahead and get comfortable. So that's the end of that story, and we get this part where again, supposed to look all normal, but then we see the X marks the spot thing where I'm assuming it's supposed to be covering up the face of whoever is actually Red X. Because as you can see, we have Chupa, because it goes alphabetically like a yearbook. So what we have, the last name we see is Diego Perez, which is actually, if you'll remember, Chupacabra. Then the next person who would be here in the next square or whatever would be Brick, because you can almost kind of see his red hair poking out from this, not right here. You can sort of almost see his red hair poking out. It's very hard to see, but you can see it. And his last name, if you'll remember, is Petiroso. So that would definitely come after Perez, which would mean that the next person after him would have to be whoever Red X is. That's why it says X marks the spot. And if you will remember, his roommate, Brick's roommate, is a guy named M. Radley. So that would probably, Radley, R.A., would probably come after P.E., Petiroso. So I'm pretty sure that that's who it is. But we still don't actually know who that is, because I don't think we've actually, well, we might have actually seen them already, like, shown. But anyway, we get this next story, which is, this is where I was talking about. Like, we finally actually get to see who the current Red X is, because we see a backup or like a flashback story to the second Red X. Try to follow along with me if you already are. But anyway, we see this situation where unfortunately there's a lot of like foster home situations like this, where you can see there are two parents who take in all of these like kids or whatever for the extra money from the government, even though they really don't do anything to take care of the kids at all. So this guy is coming to bring more kids, and she's like, well, wait a minute. I told you like you had to bring two or something like that. She said, yeah. I didn't say we'd take it, take it. And then the husband's trying to say like take it, and then she asks like same money, but he says, you know it's less. And he's like, oh, because she tries to slam the door. He's like, hold up. What if I get you a second one, like last time? That doubles your money. You can stretch your meal budget a little more to make the math work. So, anyway, she takes the kid in, and then she's like, bring another one like this, and you got yourself a deal. But she ain't walking through my door till I take care of that infested mop. So, apparently, she's going to shave all the little girl's hair off because she's worried about lice and whatever. So, she's gonna do that, and then he's like leaving or whatever, but then he gets immediately encountered by this shadowy figure who, as you can imagine, is the other Red X. So he's confronting him in the alley, and he says like, who else is going, because he's telling him like, he's trying to excuse why he dropped off the kid here or why he brings the kids to these people, and he's like, so who else is going to raise them? You think that would be better? And then Red X tells him like, anything is better than this, asshole. And he's like, if I catch you treating any more foster kids like welfare lottery tickets, I'll cut off whatever manhood you think you have and feed it to your daughter. The fat one. Mindy, right? So he's like, I thought you were a good guy. He's like, there are no good guys. So anyway, there's a knock at the door, and the lady's like, the stork? That was fast. So she goes to it, or she's about to go to it, but then Red X kicks in the door. So they're like freaking out. And then he immediately attacks, and they pull out guns on him just immediately and start shooting. So he gets ready to take them out, and he tells the kids to run, and then he takes out both of them because one of them stabs him in the leg with I think it's the guy, yeah, the husband like stabs him in the leg or whatever with a knife. And then there's one kid who's just standing there, and then the husband takes the Red X's like katanas or whatever the hell, and then he's holding the kid like hostage, like with the blade to his neck. And he's like, enough, X, we just work for Black Mask. I don't know what he did to you, but it ain't got nothing to do with it. He's like, you think this is about me? Delusional. So he's telling him like, I'll do it, and then he manages to like throw one of his like shuriken X's into his head in time. So that kills him, and then he like slumps down to take out the knife or whatever. And he's asking the kid like, "Why didn't you run?" And then, or no, he just tells him like, "It's okay, it's over." And then he asks him, "Why didn't you run with the rest of your family?" So the kid tells him like, "They weren't my family." And he's like, "No, those people, the adults, they were monsters, profiting off your misery today." And then tomorrow, using you to fight their war for them. So literally raising their own like child gangsters, I guess, which that's pretty sinister, but that's a pretty good setup. So he says to die for them. People like that need to be stopped. It's what we do. "You know who I am?" And he said, the kid tells him, "I saw you on TV with the Titans. You're Rob." And he's like, "No, I'm the one who took this mask from him, who took his fake mission and made it real. I was the first, but there will be more." So the kid asks him, "Why do you wear an X?" He says, "It's a cross, like how you cross something out to say that it's done. So when our enemies see us coming for them, they know it's already over." He says, "Do you know why the X is red?" And then the kid says, "It's the color of their blood." So we get this like close up on the kid, and we can see what he looks like. Kind of like olive complexion. I'm not really sure what hair color that's supposed to be. And then his eyes are like this very pale. Like my eye color has always been described as like hazel, but this is even more pale than that. It's like a very 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 pale brown, almost into like damn near yellow, I guess, almost. So that brings us to the future, where apparently the grown-up Red X is bringing the child Red X and says, "So kid, you want what? You want the mask or not?" So that was when he gave him the mask and everything. And that was what kicked off this whole series of events, I suppose. But that's actually where this leaves off. And that's where I was saying, like, I expected this, especially from the way that it looks on the cover. Like, I expected this to be just, like I said, about, like, the students and just about, like, random shit that didn't actually have anything to do with the story itself or the ongoing saga. Now, granted, I'm not particularly happy that they had to go ahead and put more information as to the identity of Red X in a tie-in like this. Like, can we stop? Can y'all just tell a story that's actually told in the series itself instead of having to find some way to do annuals and backups and tie-in issues and all of this crap? Can y'all just tell a story that's a straightforward story that's actually interesting all the way through in the series itself? That way I can actually read a whole story and know that I have a whole story because I've collected the series, and not worry about, well, I missed a crucial part of the story because I didn't buy the tie-in that one time. Like, stop it. Put all of the story in the damn series or don't. If you need all of these fragmented parts to try and tell your story, it's a bad story. I'm just going to go ahead and call it right now. I don't care how interesting you think it is. I don't care how many other like diverse people you're hiring to do these pointless tie-ins. If it's not all in the story, if it's not all in the series, it's not worth buying. It's a bad story. If you have to break it down into this many pieces, then there was no point. I'm gonna go ahead and call that now. And I'm someone who's actually stupid enough, and yes, I'm willing to say that I'm actually someone stupid enough to buy the actual tie-ins to get the whole story, because I'm that type of person. I care about story. I want to read the story. I don't care about the variant covers or who you got to write what story. I want to read the story. If it's good, that's what I'll tell you about. So that's really my only complaint from this. Like, I didn't even have that big of an issue with the stories contained therein. Like, the Stitch story was alright, even though the character of Stitch has kind of been superfluous up to this point. Like, you could take Stitch out of the ongoing, like, thing, and Stitch isn't really, like, vital to the story. So I don't know why we had to start out with Stitch's story, other than to, like, bring in that whole Dr. Fate connection. So I don't really see what other point that was serving. But yeah, that's my only actual gripe against this, is that they're stretching this storyline out in a way that they A, don't need to be doing, but also B, that's just kind of like detrimental to themselves. Because like I said, what are you really doing? You're trying to get people to pick up more of your comics, but you're trying to get them to pick up stories that aren't even complete. Even if they are willing to pick up the Teen Titans Academy storyline issue by issue, they're not going to go and like be searching out these pointless tie-ins called Yearbook. They're not going to care. They're going to want just Teen Titans Academy, because that's where you told them the story is. And then you put the actual elements of the story everywhere else. Stop doing that, DC and Marvel, because both of you are shitting the bed in the exact same way. So that's my only real gripe with that. So I guess if you have any similar complaints, or really if you read this and you have any further thoughts on who Red X is, because like I said, up to this point, I was just saying it's going to be Dane. Not that it couldn't still be, I guess, at this point. I mean, who knows? Maybe they could still surprise me and let it be. But if it really is someone who they just haven't even ever shown in the series up to this point, I'm going to be a little bit more flustered, you know? But I don't know. I guess we'll find out who it actually is. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's that M. Radley guy. And if I don't put it here, I will have put it at some point earlier in the video. like what he was, what he looked like that time that we actually, because like I said, we saw who Brick is roommates with. Like when the Bat Pack was going around looking for evidence and everything, like that kid poked, I'm pretty sure it was that kid poked his head out of that room. So if that is him, and I'm pretty sure it is because even Chupacabra was like, who's M. Radley? So if we've never even seen that character, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed. You've been building up this suspense and like, well, maybe it's this one. Well, maybe it's this one. Well, maybe it's this one. And then you do an issue saying, well, it was none of those three. And then you're just going to come in and be like, well, actually, it's someone you never even were introduced to. That's not a good reveal because that's stupid. But anyway, we'll see what comes of it. If you read this, then do feel free to let me know what you thought about it. Let me know what you thought about this setup. Who knows? Maybe I'll just start doing my videos here instead. And then sometimes I'll do my videos in like my review videos or whatever in the other setup. I don't know. We'll find out. But let me know what you thought about all of it here in the comment section. And if you like this video, then do like the video. Subscribe if you want to come back for more reviews just like this. But if you guys are done here, then go read a book. And if not, then I will see you on the next video.